Good afternoon. My name is Shaun Kennedy, and I am the 2017 Chair-elect of the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for the Chamber's City Council forums. In an effort to engage a broader and more diverse audience, we will be broadcasting our forum today using Facebook Live. As you may know, the Chamber does not endorse any political candidate. However, the purpose of the forum today is really to inform the community about the mayor and the city council candidates and their position on important economic issues facing our region. The San Antonio Chamber is made up of more than 2,100 businesses who together employ more than half a billion people in San Antonio, which happens to be the 7th largest city in the United States. Our mission is to propel businesses and their success by engaging business owners, policymakers, and community leaders to address issues important to San Antonio and our surrounding region. The San Antonio business community understands the integral role that our city leaders play in ensuring San Antonio maintains a business-friendly environment and a thriving economy. Our forum today will consist of about a 25-minute discussion. Candidate questions have been developed by the Chamber's Public Affairs Council and focus on issues that are most important to our business community, specifically issues around the city finance and city budget, transportation, education, affordable housing, the millennial culture, and certainly job growth. We will also be taking questions from you, our viewers, so make sure to submit your questions in the comments section below this video. The forum will be available on the Chamber's website leading up to Election Day. Initially, what we'd like to do with our forum today is have each of our candidates start with a 2-minute opening statement. So with that, I would like to begin. One of our candidates, due to a scheduling conflict, was not able to join us today for our forum, so I would like to read the statement that the candidates provided for this particular session. Thank you for the invitation to participate in the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce's candidate forum. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend because of a conflicting appointment scheduled several weeks ago. However, I'd like to acknowledge the Chamber's central role in the civic life of our city. Your members and the companies that they represent should be proud. Mayor Ivy R. Taylor. So that was Mayor Taylor's apology and opening comment, and now Councilman Ron Nirenberg, I'd like to turn it over to you and give you some time, 2 minutes, to give us your opening statement, and thank you for being with us today.
Great, well thank you, Shaun, and thank you to the Chamber, its members, and to those folks watching at home or at the office. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you about the priorities of our city. My name is Ron Nirenberg. I'm the very proud father of an 8-year-old son named Jonah and the proud husband of a woman named Erica Prosper, who herself will be leading a chamber next year, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Got to San Antonio in 1995 to attend school at Trinity University. By the time I graduated, I had fallen in love with this city for many of the reasons that many of us stay here. It's a city where we can find an affordable home to live in a safe community, a place where you can build a career. It's a diverse and inclusive city, and a place where you feel like the best days of your life are still in front of you. And that's the way I want you to feel about your city. Over the last few years, we've had some extraordinary challenges, and I've talked to people all across this city, and they're basically saying the same thing, that San Antonio is doing all right, doing just okay. Within the next 30 years, this city will be the size of Chicago population-wise. Our population will be expected to double in that time, and we've already seen the challenges that status quo has brought us. The highest violent crime rate we've had in a generation, an affordability crisis where the average family in San Antonio can no longer afford the average home that's being built in our city. In addition to that, we have a gridlock in our roads and no plan to move forward. Those things need to change. You deserve a city that's better than that, and that's why we've called our campaign The City You Deserve. A city where when you go out on the roads, you're free from the gridlock that you're stuck in every day. A city that's creating great paying jobs that everyone can benefit from. A city where you feel free from the fear of violent crime in your neighborhoods and on your streets and in your parks and all public places. And most importantly, a city where your elected officials, your public officials are held to the highest standards of integrity and can face real consequences when they violate the public trust. It's a city that's taking care of its citizens today and also actively planning for tomorrow. I'm an independent. I've been proud to work on issues as your District 8 City Councilman and look forward to continuing to run a campaign and ultimately ask for your vote to be the next mayor of San Antonio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Nirenberg, for that opening statement. Appreciate it very much. One of the first questions that we have for you today is right after the election on June 10th, the city is going to begin the budget prioritization process for the upcoming fiscal year. Our viewers are very interested to hear what you would advocate for as the top priorities for next year's budget.
Yeah, so we have a $2.5 billion budget, seventh largest city in the United States. One of the most important things that we need to be cognizant of as city officials is to protect the strong fiscal ratings and fiscal condition that the city is in. We save money, tens of millions of dollars every year by virtue of us being one of the strongest fiscally managed city in the country. So strong fiscal management, efficiency with our resources is number one. Beyond that, a lot of that efficiency comes from the fact that we've taken care of our infrastructure. And we know that the city, which is booming in population and experiencing expansion on our roads and our parks, pretty much every part of public life, needs to be addressed. So my number one priority, which should be the priority of infrastructure and services of the city, is to ensure that we're putting adequate capital into our roads and streets, sidewalks, drainage, the very basics of the city. And that's even more of a challenge with this bond, knowing that we have a city that also has seen places that have been disinvested in for years, for decades. We want to make sure that we're identifying those areas, that we can improve those areas. At the same time, we're taking care of the high growth corners of our city as well.
Thank you for that. The second question relates to something you touched on in your opening comment, and that's our population growth. San Antonio must deal with, among other things, increased traffic congestion. What would you do and what would your plan be to develop a safe, effective, and efficient multimodal transportation network that would move people throughout the San Antonio area and the region?
Yeah, and I wish Mayor Taylor were here so we could discuss this, because I think this is a major difference between us. I do have a plan for traffic congestion, and it's multifaceted. First, and most importantly, we have to identify and take care of those areas that are bottlenecked. The areas of our roadway system that need to be addressed with increased capacity. We will do that, we will prioritize that, but to just put our eggs in that basket is to deny the future that's staring at us in the face. We add 150 vehicles to our roads every single day. Within the next 25 years, we'll have another 500,000 vehicles on our roads in San Antonio. Just building our way out of congestion is not an option. So we have to advance a multimodal system for the city of San Antonio. I was proud to chair the SA Tomorrow effort, which was 18 months in the making. We have a citizen-directed plan. Now we need to make it voter-approved. The elements of it are already, some of which are already voter-approved. Extending the Greenway Trails, which I was a champion for, and putting it back on the ballot in 2015, so that it's more than just a path from one park to another, but it's actually an option for mobility around our city. We have to continue to advance the Vision Zero plan to address sidewalk infrastructure needs all throughout our community so that people can use the original mode of transportation, which is your feet. And then certainly we have to advance a safe bicycle master plan, which needs some adjustments. It's not just supposed to be stripes on the side of a 60-mile-an-hour road. It needs to be safe, and people need to have an option for safely moving around our community on bike. But we do have to get back to improving bus service, particularly on the west and south sides of town. That will come back immediately for this next council to address, and that's very important. But what will get us to a future that I think we will be proud of and our economy will move is a mass transit system for the city of San Antonio. We have the concept for it through SA Tomorrow and working with the MPO and with VIA in cooperation. Now we have to put it on people's ballots to approve it so that we can begin design, engineering, and ultimately construction for that mass transit system. I'm clear on this. I will bring that to voters for approval so that we can get moving on that. We can't afford to wait before our traffic gets even worse before we address congestion for the future.
Typically, when we do talk about that congestion, there's a couple of additional things that come up, or at least the viewers like to hear about the following. The first would be your views on high-speed or passenger rail as part of an integrated multimodal network. That's question number one. And then the second question would be, again, with that congestion, do you believe that toll lanes are an appropriate remedy for our city's congestion problems?
So, actually, three things. I believe strongly, and I've played an active role in getting Lone Star Rail on the right track so that we can build a commuter rail between Austin and San Antonio. We are in a better place now, thanks to the efforts of my colleagues at the MPO, particularly Councilman Lopez, who's chaired it for the last 2 years, to get Lone Star Rail into a path forward that has political and financial efficacy. So we will see that moving, and that's an important part of the transportation picture. Here in town, though, I am talking about mass transit on fixed routes, potentially light rail. That needs to be voter approved. It needs to be citizen directed, and citizens have directed us to that being an option. Now we need to see if voters would actually say that's okay. And because of the charter amendment from the last election, we know that that needs to be brought to people's ballots so we can have that as an option. I do look forward to that. On toll roads, there is some confusion about this. I will tell you that the direction from the state is that we aren't building toll roads right now. We have taken one step into congestion management solutions with HOV lanes, high occupancy vehicle or transit lanes. But let's be clear, existing lanes will not be tolled if I have anything to do with it. And that's the policy right now. In addition to that, we should not be building toll roads if we have resources to take care of free capacity that will address congestion. So the plans that are out there right now are to increase capacity on the roads 281, 604, I-10, and to add managed congestion managed solutions like HOV that are irrespective of tolls.
Thank you. The next question relates to the bond program, and as you know, we recently passed an $850 million bond. Within that $850 million, there was $20 million that was set aside specifically for affordable housing. Curious what other initiatives you would like to undertake for affordable housing in our community in addition to that $20 million that's been set aside.
Yeah, and let's also be clear that the $20 million was simply to add another tool into the box of our city to potentially deal with affordability issues. The problem with the city of San Antonio and many urban cities around the country is the fact that we have no comprehensive housing policy that deals directly with issues of gentrification and displacement. That's a high priority for me, something that I would like to do within the first 100 days of office. And the reason for that is we have to be confident that those areas of disinvestment, for instance, that I mentioned earlier, that we have to be confident that the city can invest in those communities, fix sidewalks, fix streets, beautify parks, make sure that a great city, a city that you can be proud of, is located in every corner of the city without fear of people being displaced because property values are rising. We have to reconvene a housing group that is dedicated to that issue specifically, gentrification, displacement. That's the first issue. I want to work with the development community and the real estate community to make sure that, though, one thing is also made clear: we can't incentivize and subsidize our way into affordability. We have to make sure, and we have to develop a system of policies and regulations that isn't so onerous that margins go through the roof because it's not practical, not profitable to build affordable housing. Right now, we are still disincentivizing and incentivizing in the wrong places, so that it's cheaper to churn up greenfield outside of 1604 than it is to actually redevelop sustainable housing in the urban core, where it can be serviced from other infrastructure, from other public services like public transportation and so forth. So we have a mix of policy that is simply upside down for the private sector to benefit from. I want to work with the development community to reverse that, to make sure that the kind of housing that we want to see that's affordable, that people can be confident in, is not going to displace them, is actually profitable again, and we can begin to build a San Antonio that isn't solely reliant on incentives and government subsidy.
Okay, thank you. Our next question relates to our millennial population. As you know, San Antonio is among one of the U.S. cities that has the fastest growing millennial population, and we're seeing that obviously with some of the urbanization that's taking place and some of the downtown housing that's been made available. What measures would you suggest in the near term to continue the city's appeal for that millennial generation? And millennials actually can be even the Gen X's, the Gen Z's, the millennials, but it's just bringing in that younger, more youthful lifeblood to our community.
Well, this is why I've been a strong proponent of technology and innovation, disruptive technologies, Uber and Lyft. You know, when the mayor was pushing Uber and Lyft out, I brought this up, that this is not just about transportation, this is about economic development for San Antonio. So, you know, thankfully, she worked with us to bring them back in. It's important that we grow a whole city that is attractive, that is economically vibrant. And the way we do that is to ensure that it's connected. Transportation-wise, we need to have more options than just cars to get in. I think millennials will agree that many of them are moving into cities that they can walk to work, or they can walk to, you know, fun places, fun things to do. We also have to ensure that we're creating jobs that millennials will fill, that is 21st century workforce, future workforce oriented. So I want to work with our economic development agencies and departments to ensure that we're spending our resources and time devoted to building jobs in those sectors. I want to mobilize the private sector, our CEOs and our private sector standouts to help be ambassadors for bringing 21st century jobs to San Antonio, rather than, you know, divvying up incentives and abatements through bureaucrats begging for jobs to come to San Antonio. I think we can do that in a much more efficient way. That way we can devote the resources that we have here locally to growing small businesses, entrepreneurship, locally owned businesses. Something I look forward to. And then ultimately with millennials, I think back, it wasn't that long ago, I just turned 40. But I think back as to when, you know, I was building a career, finding my first home to live in with my wife Erica. And we bought a house that we could afford. And so affordability is a huge issue, making sure that we have places pattern that is profitable, so that we have affordable places to live that are in the areas where millennials will want, in the urban core. That right now is not happening, and I look forward to helping make that happen.
And so on that affordability, as a follow-up question, is that, in your eyes, do you see that as multifamily, like apartments, or is that infill, single-family residences? What do you see on that affordability front for that live, work, play concept?
Yeah, and I think it's life cycle housing, mixed opportunity, mixed neighborhoods, mixed income, and mixed opportunities. It's not just multifamily, although we know that young people are also looking for places that don't have yards, many of them. But by the time you raise a family, you're having your first children, you're looking for a place where you can stretch out, that's located in a place that has a good school. So I think it's a combination. It's multifamily, it is good, solid, single-family housing stock. And you know, another part of this housing policy is ensuring that we have the right resources for rehab. We have an aging housing stock within the urban core in many different places, even in District 8, the medical center area. We need to make sure that we're encouraging rehabilitation, not just clean sweep redevelopment.
Thank you for that. Next question has to do with our population and those that have maybe gone to college but haven't really fully obtained that college degree yet. So let me kind of share with you the perspective. We have about 300,000 individuals in San Antonio that have some college, but they have not actually obtained that college degree. This segment of our population is critical to ensuring that we remain globally competitive now and more so in the future. What plans would you have to upskill or enhance the skills of this population, and how do you see this fitting into the larger economic development strategy for our community?
And this is a challenge specifically within Texas, acutely within Texas and in San Antonio, although it is experienced nationwide. There's upwards of 8.5 million people looking for work, and about 5 million jobs that go unfilled because they're just not, there's not an available workforce. So the skills gap is real. It's a national issue. It's also a local issue. I think SA Works, which was years in the making, a response from the private sector of the government and the public sector kind of dragging its feet, is a great model to follow. We should facilitate the development partnerships between the private sector and our educational institutions to upskill workers. We have great partnerships right now, and something I've been a proud supporter of, even far away, the Alamo Academies, which helps train students who are still in high school so that they have the skills that they will need to participate in advanced manufacturing and other careers by the time they graduate from high school. But those same kind of partnerships between educational institutions and private sector employers can also exist, and we look forward to tackling those. And also, there are large employers in San Antonio who I think ought to be emulated. USAA, HEB, Valero, that do a great job in providing continuing education for their employees. I think that's something that we have to be cognizant of, because former President Ricardo Romo of UTSA used to talk about the third job, the jobs that we don't even know what they look like yet, but we're having to work on building a foundation of skills so that our workers today will be ready for them when they are coming to San Antonio.
Great, thank you for that. What steps do you think the city should take to promote more job growth, to kind of continue on that thought process?
Yeah, and this is, again, just to reiterate, I think we can be much more efficient and strategic about our economic development strategy. I think we talked about over the last few years in San Antonio how historically our job strategy was shoot anything that flies. Well, San Antonio is a much more mature economy than it used to be. We have grown to be extraordinary pillars within industries like biosciences, advanced manufacturing, financial management, technology. And I think what we need to do is more strategically mobilize our private sector to be ambassadors, people who have achieved success based on the great things that are happening here in San Antonio, like a great business environment, adequate natural resources, available workforce, and we should mobilize the private sector to go out and champion San Antonio, to be the sales force of San Antonio, be ambassadors in the world to bring those jobs to San Antonio. That way the little resources that we have here locally, abatement incentives, things like that, can be focused on where 90+% of our job growth actually comes from, which is small businesses, entrepreneurs. And I think our resources, abatements and incentives can be better utilized in the small business sector if we're doing our jobs as ambassadors better.
Okay, thank you. We did have a couple of questions that came in from our Facebook audience, so we'll take those at this point, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we do this every week. Ask Ron on our Facebook Live, so anybody's welcome to overtime.
There we go.
Thursday.
So the first one, and you touched on it, Councilman Nirenberg, just a few minutes ago, but what is your position on the statewide regulation for transportation network companies? Something that we've heard about recently in Austin.
Yeah, well, I have mixed feelings about this because obviously, especially as a member of the San Antonio Intergovernmental Relations Committee, I am an advocate for local control. And we certainly want to have the option and local authority to work with our constituents and develop ordinances and regulations that best suits San Antonians. So that's ultimately where I stand on it. We prefer to do this locally. But I will say, where I stand with transportation networking companies and technology in general, disruptive technologies, we have to be open and embracing to them. So I'm glad that if there is overreach, which it is, that is erring to the sides of developing new industries and encouraging innovation.
Thank you. Another question, again, something that's been in the news and in the legislature, and actually even in our own local political environment, is annexation. Annexation was and is a hot topic in the legislative session. Do you support giving property owners the right to vote for or against the municipal annexation?
Yeah, I do. However, I will say that I do believe cities, San Antonio, the city of San Antonio, cities throughout Texas ought to have the authority to annex. What was attempted at the legislature, I fully support. The great work that Senator Menendez did to protect the interests of San Antonio, knowing full well that I did not vote for, nor do I support the annexation proposal that was recently passed. And that is because annexation, as we have been rolling it out here lately, is a 1950 solution to a 2017 problem. We can't simply chase after new rooftops when we know our economic development, or the economics of annexation are completely upside down given some of the action of the legislature. We continue to see more liabilities than revenues for every foot of roadway that we have in our jurisdiction. It's harder and harder for us to maintain those streets and those sidewalks and maintain adequate police protection and fire protection as our city gets bigger. So making our city bigger just for the sake of new revenues is failed logic. In addition to that fact, we work with, and we are working with, communities that are all around the city of San Antonio for a strong economic metropolis in Central and South Texas. We work with Austin, we work with San Marcos, we work with New Braunfels. Local communities that have the infrastructure and have the resources to take care of their own can be great allies in building strong economic development throughout this region that we can all cooperate and benefit from. Our answer can't simply be to acquire the jurisdiction. And I give you the example of IKEA. I mean, a lot of people are extraordinarily excited that IKEA is coming to San Antonio. Well, they're not. They're coming to Live Oak, which is, a couple hundred feet outside of the city limits. And the reason is, they found, more benefit, I'm sure, bottom line for their company. There will always be a foot outside of San Antonio boundaries. It can't simply be about moving our boundaries to acquire tax revenue. We have to make sure it's done in a sustainable manner.
Thank you. The final question, what steps would you take to address San Antonio receiving a non-attainment designation?
Well, I'm proud to be chairing the Alamo Area Council of Governments Air Improvement Resources Executive Committee, where we've been developing an early action strategy for air quality. I'm very excited about the new councilwoman who's coming on, Imana Sandoval, who has extraordinary wealth of experience in the area of air quality, so I imagine the city will be leaning quite heavily on her expertise. I already do. We have been developing some ordinances and different programs. One of them is an anti-idling ordinance, which in and of itself is not going to address this issue, but is a signal to our community that we all have to be conscious about air quality for the purposes of public health, but also avoiding economic sanctions. But the real work, and we've electrified our fleet vehicles, electrified our jet bridges at San Antonio International. We've passed different smart policies that avoid certain substances that produce greenhouse gases and so forth. But the real heavy lifting will be to build a mass transit system, which will help dramatically improve air quality, and also continue to ensure that CPS has its pedal to the metal, no pun intended, on building a renewable portfolio. They have a strong track record via SA 2020 in building solar and wind and other renewable parts of its portfolio. We have to continue to push that so that it continues to move aggressively towards renewables. And the mayor has an extraordinary seat at the table of that. Because this is a publicly owned utility, we have to make sure that it's operating in the best interest of the community at large. And this is for public health purposes and for economic reasons. Last thing I'll say is we do not know where the federal government will be on the issue of air quality. The EPA is in a state of turmoil right now with the new administration. My position is this: we know 52 people in Bexar County died as a result of air pollution last year. Air quality has sweeping effects on children and then people with pre-existing conditions. For health reasons alone, cleaning up our air is the right thing to do. We can't simply wait for the federal government to force us to do it. We have to do it proactively as a community, and that's what you will expect from me as your mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Nirenberg. This concludes the questions, both from our Facebook listeners today, as well as those that were prepared for our discussion today. And on behalf of the more than 2,100 chamber members, we want to thank you for being here today. We also want to remind the viewers that each forum will be available on the chamber website leading up to Election Day. And when I say each forum, in addition to the mayoral candidate forum, we also have had other forums taking place on the various council positions that are in the runoff for the election. So those will also be on the chamber website. And make sure to hit the polls. Early voting actually did start today, for those that aren't aware of that. And Election Day is on Saturday, June 10th. So with that, we'll conclude this particular session. Thank you to the listeners, and the viewers who have been here today to take part in this. And thank you, Councilman Nirenberg, for your commentary. Appreciate it.
Sean.
You bet.